Hey guys and gals, welcome to another Killer Be Killed review. My name is Scott, and today we will be reviewing Gerald's Game, a Netflix original movie based on the Stephen King novel of the same name. Before I start talking about it, just a spoiler warning, I'm going to be going through what goes on in this movie, what makes it tick, yada yada yada. There's going to be a brief synopsis of the whole thing. Just be warned if you haven't seen it yet. Go ahead and watch it. It's up on Netflix's Instant Watch as of now. Check it out if you haven't already. And if you continue to watch this video without seeing it, you've been warned. Do so at your own risk, I suppose. Anyways, let's get into this. So Gerald's Game is a pretty interesting idea. I think that's what mostly is going for this movie, is the entire concept. So basically, Gerald's Game revolves around this couple. They're going to this cabin in the woods sort of situation to revitalize their marriage. The two characters are Jessie, the wife, and Gerald, the husband. So they show up and nothing really happens until the first major conflict of the movie, which pretty much sets up the entire movie. But anyways, the main point of their retreat for this thing is more of a sexual retreat, if that makes any sense. They've been having some marriage issues, as I said earlier, and in those marriage issues, there's a lack of physical intimacy. So they're like, all right, well, let's try something new. And they get to the cabin, and Gerald takes a Viagra because he is old and he needs Viagra, I suppose. And he handcuffs Jessie to the bedposts and starts his idea of his fantasy. I'm not quite sure if him and Jessie had a talk about what exactly he was looking for. Jessie makes a small mention about the handcuffs, like these are a lot stronger than I expected or something like that. So I assume that she knew about the handcuffs, but I don't think she really entirely knew what he was going for with those handcuffs. I guess. But anyways, so she's handcuffed and Gerald goes into this really weird, like, affair slash rapey kind of fantasy, and Jessie's not into it at all. So Jessie tells him to stop, and Gerald's really agitated. He's like, I'm trying here. I'm the one putting forth the effort. And she's like, well, this makes me uncomfortable. I'm not really into this whole rapey vibe sort of fantasy you got going on. And he's just, being kind of a general dick, I guess. Just not really. Oh, whatever. They're on different pages, clearly, as far as sexual intimacy goes. And so she keeps saying, like, uncuff me, please, blah, 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 blah. And he keeps going into, like, this argument. Like, I'm the one trying here, blah, 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 blah. I'm trying. You're not putting forth your portion of the effort. She's like, but I don't want to do this. This makes me uncomfortable. And so then Gerald, in the middle of their argument before uncuffing her, has a heart attack, falls off the bed, and dies. So yeah, and she's still handcuffed to the bedpost, and there's not a key around anywhere. And so that's pretty much the whole concept behind this movie, I suppose you can put it into that. They go to this cabin and they're trying to have, revitalize their sexual relationship. Doesn't work. He cuffs her to the bed. Doesn't uncuff her before he has a heart attack, and now she has to figure out how to get out of this predicament. And also a dog that they encountered earlier comes into the house and starts eating Gerald. So yeah, that's kind of the main idea behind it. It's a really interesting idea. I would say more than half of the movie is taken up by just Jessie being handcuffed to this bedpost, which works as a novel, but you wouldn't expect that sort of concept to transfer well to the movie. But anyways, I digress. I'll speak a little bit more about that later when I actually talk about what I liked and what I didn't like about the film. Whatever. I'm going to keep the synopsis going. Anyways, so after he has a heart attack and dies, Jessie starts having these hallucinations. One of the hallucinations is a version of Gerald, and the other hallucination is a version of Jessie. And basically they go through this whole thing where they're like constantly reminding Jessie, the real Jessie, the alive one who's handcuffed to the bedpost, how that you don't have much time, that no one one's around to hear her scream, or no one's around to help her. But then they also go a little bit into detail about the backstory, specifically of Gerald. It's revealed that Gerald's kind of a dick. Specifically, like, Jesse recounts an instance at a party where Gerald was like laughing at this misogynistic joke. Anyways, the point of that backstory is to more enhance that idea that there's been some clear disconnect between Gerald and Jesse, and not just on a sexual level, but also on just a general personal and relationship level. So anyways, then randomly, one of the nights, she hallucinates this character guy who kind of looks like a hunchback version of Snoke from Star Wars with a treasure chest. Yeah, that's weird. Yeah, the hallucinations keep happening, and like they keep hinting that, oh, maybe that guy wasn't a hallucination. You know, the doors open to the house. You don't know who could have walked in and just saw her there. But like, as an audience member, you're thinking like, there's no fucking way that was real. I mean, it's kind of funny because the hallucinations are the most real part of this story in a certain way. I'm gonna get more into that later, but anyways, the point is they're subtly hinting that maybe Hunchback Snoke is real. Maybe he came in and he did some creepy Hunchback Snoke stuff. And as an audience member, I was completely ignoring that. There's no way that this is real. There's no way that guy was actually there and it actually exists. Anyways, I digress. We'll come back to that later. Jessie starts kind of, not hallucinating, but more like going back into her memories. And we learn through her memories that she was sexually abused by her father. She wasn't like molested, but it was sexual abuse, and it was really creepy and uncomfortable. Anyways, it's just further backstory into her character, and it kind of pushes forth the characterization of Jessie and her relationship, specifically her relationship with her husband and her father, and how those two kind of come together. Like it's mentioned, Gerald's quite a bit older than Jessie, and it's kind of like, you know, one of those like quote-unquote daddy issues sort of things. But anyways, yes, she just, more stuff happens like that, you know, general dialogue exchanges between her and her hallucinations, and them telling her that she needs to get out of this situation like now. And so eventually she comes to the realization, no one's coming to get me. I have to get out of this myself. And so before Gerald took his Viagra, he had a glass of water and put it on top of this shelf above the bed. And earlier, before the backstory stuff, she had found that glass of water and taken, you know, sips of it. But obviously a glass of water is not going to last you weeks, which is more than likely how long it would have taken for someone to find her. But it's a glass of water, so what she does is she breaks the glass on the shelf, takes a shard of that glass, and pretty much de-skins her hand so that she can slip out of this handcuff. They do not shy away from showing you the details in this. Personally, I don't mind gore. I like gore if it's done well and not goofy or cartoony, or like, basically if it's done well, I can appreciate it. If the gore is there to enhance the horror and not just to be a novelty, then yeah, go for it. So for me, I didn't really mind this scene, but if you're a little bit squeamish and you can't handle gory things, you might want to like shield your eyes during the scene, because yeah, it's really detailed. And it's funny because there's no blood or gore throughout the entire movie. I mean, obviously you can tell with the concept that it's not supposed to be like a slasher or a gory movie, but still, it just kind of hits you out of nowhere because you're just not really expecting something like that, which I think is really well done and is definitely a staple of the movie, and in my opinion is definitely a positive. But anyways, yeah, so she basically de-skins her hand with this glass. She gets out of her handcuff, gets the key, uncuffs the other handcuff, you know, gets out of there. And in the middle of the room, she runs into Hunchback Snoke. And Hunchback Snoke is there with like this treasure chest again for some reason. And so she takes her wedding ring off and puts it in there, like I guess as an offering, and walks past him. And there you go, she's free. So she gets into a car and thinks it's a good idea to start driving and to, I guess, drive to the hospital. Why? Why didn't she call the cops? Why didn't she call an ambulance? She's literally falling asleep at the wheel and dying of blood loss, trying to drive to the hospital. And eventually she just fucking crashes her car into a tree. Lucky for her, she got far enough to where there were neighbors nearby so that they can call the police, call an ambulance to come and get her. But yeah, I guess you can chalk that up to she was clearly not in the sort of mind to be making good decisions, and she made a really bad decision. But I just thought that was kind of ridiculous. Like, driving, really not a good idea. But anyways, whatever. Moving on. So anyways, she goes to the hospital and, you know, she gets better. She doesn't die or anything. She has her hand repaired, blah, 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 blah. So Jesse then starts this sort of charity thing to help women who were sexually abused as children, which is, again, the situation that she was recounting on earlier during her time strapped or handcuffed to the bedpost. And then it's revealed that Hunchback Snoke guy was real. Yeah. He was like a grave robber / serial killer who would steal the belongings from dead bodies and put them in this treasure chest sort of thing. There's also many more gruesome elements to his crimes, but I'm not going to get into that right now. But yeah, Hunchback Snoke guy was real. Out of everything that she saw and heard during her time strapped to this bed, the least likely, most ridiculous thing that she saw happened to be real. And for whatever reason, this serial killer Hunchback Snoke guy decided not to kill her. Well, basically, he goes on trial, and she shows up to his trial, and she confronts him, and repeats this line like, "You're not real! You're not real! You kept saying that!" Which she did say earlier when she saw him in the hall after she escaped. She was saying, "You're not real, yada, yada, yada." So I'm assuming that the reason why he did not kill her was because she doubted him and his existence. Yeah, kind of weird. Kind of weird. But yeah, he was real, and she, I guess, comes to terms with him being real, and that's it. That's pretty much how the movie ends. What a weird movie. I thought in general the concept behind, you know, being strapped to this bed as a part of this, you know, sexual retreat thing, I thought that was a really interesting idea, and it's one of those ideas that you wouldn't expect could transfer well to film, and to attempt to do that, you have to get it, like, perfect, or else it's going to come off really shitty. And in this case, I think that they did it absolutely perfectly well. I have no issues. There was no boring parts of this movie. It was really well done how they transferred this from novel to movie. There's certainly never a dull moment in the entire film. The plot comes off as rather short, yet the length of the movie doesn't necessarily reflect that. Basically what I mean by that is it doesn't drag on. Specifically her moment strapped to the bed does not really drag on, and in fact, though that portion is kind of what defines this movie, it only really takes up like half of the entire movie. There's the general build up before it, and then there's that entire, you know, ending sequence with a Hunchback Snoke guy who is in the film referred to as the Moonlight Man. And that's really where my number one complaint with this movie lies, is the existence of the Moonlight Man character. Why? What is the point? Why does he exist? I can't really understand what his purpose is. This character does not relate at all to Jesse's backstory. This character does not at all relate to her husband Gerald or her father, unless you want to make the argument that he was in a sort of sense her captor, much like Gerald and her husband were also her captors. But then again, that's kind of a stretch, because really all the Moonlight Man did was like watch her and didn't help her. Wasn't really her captor. Was her confronting him in the courtroom supposed to be her confronting her tormentor? And if so, this is kind of strange, because her confrontation at the arrangement in court was played out as sort of a redemption or a happy ending. But you'd think that the true redemption would lie in confronting her father, not a serial killer who spared her. And so, as I mentioned earlier, at the end when she confronts the Moonlight Man, he repeats, "You're not real. You're just moonlight," referring to what she kept saying to him when she thought he was a hallucination. And she replies with, "You're smaller than I remember," and smiles, and then walks away. I think that is probably the most brilliant part of the ending. If there's one point in this entire ending that you can like pinpoint and say, that was good, that was well done, and I appreciate that, that would certainly be it. Because that dialogue exchange tells us that her memories of trauma are stronger than its actual existence. She holds the power over the memories. The memories don't hold the power over her, which does provide a really interesting philosophical sort of insight into the nature of trauma and coping. So that's definitely a good part in the ending, but still, my point remains, I don't know if including such a ridiculous, wacky, almost unrealistic sort of character to implement this sort of idea of coping was really all that good of an idea. You could have portrayed that idea or concept perfectly fine having her confront one of her parents, whether it be her mother or her father, or even just dealing with this nature of her past trauma on her own. I don't feel like you needed to include such a ridiculous, out-of-this-world character and situation to have her experience this. Especially when, out of the three tormentors, if that's how we're supposed to interpret them as, the Moonlight Man is by far the least damaging of the three, for obvious reasons. I mean, if you're looking at this through an extremely literal sense, all he did was steal her wedding ring and not help her. So yeah, I guess that's my major complaint with this movie. I'd like to point out that I have not read the book by Stephen King, so I'm assuming that this is not like a movie only thing and this is also in the book, but my criticism still remains. I just don't really think that that was the best decision for this story. But who knows, things play out in books differently, and generally speaking, you can get away with more ridiculous sort of concepts and ideas in books rather than in movies. So I don't know, maybe if I read the book I'd have a different opinion on that. But still, for the movie, my opinion still stands. It's a little ridiculous, and I just feel like you could have portrayed that concept in a better, more sensible way. Regardless, though, this movie is certainly unique. As I mentioned earlier, I think the overall concept is really cool and is implemented without any hiccups at all. And even though I don't agree with the ending, it still stands out. It's still something really interesting that I've never seen before. The acting in this movie is really well done. Jessie's character is perfect. Gerald's character is perfect. Her father's character is perfect. Her mother's character is perfect. I really have nothing but good things to say about the acting and the casting and all of that. Cinematography was really good. As I mentioned earlier, the movie really kind of flies along pretty well. There's never a dull moment in this movie, and the movie really transitions well from moment to moment, where the plot even felt pretty short to me, though the movie is not short. So yeah, in general, as far as cinematography goes, it's really well done. The pacing's perfect. I have no issues with any of that. No issues with organization. It's really good. It's transferred to the big screen almost seamlessly. And as I stated earlier, my only complaint with this movie is the ending. But it's worth pointing out that the ending does take up a good chunk of the movie. Or at least for an ending it does. So as far as the rating goes, I'm going to give this thing a 7 out of 10. I would definitely recommend it. I think it's worth my time. I think it's worth anyone's time. And though it might not be perfect and it might have quirks, it's still what I would call a good movie. So yeah, 7 out of 10. Gerald's Game. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed this review. Let me know if you have any suggestions in the comments of what you would like to see me review next. And hopefully I'll see you guys in the next video. Leave a like if you liked the video. Remember to subscribe if you haven't already. And yeah, see you guys in the next one.